welcome to another IncGamers podcast. Listeners and viewers, you will never know the technical issues that go on behind the scenes. We're on multiple takes here. But anyway, yes, the podcast. We have recently been described in an iTunes interview as three bitter men talking about video games. That's a description I'm happy to go with. Paul, are you feeling bitter?
Really bitter.
Good. Tim, are you feeling bitter?
I'm as bitter as a lemon dipped in hate.
Excellent. I'm feeling fairly bitter. Moderate amount of bitterness, I think. It may rise as the podcast progresses. We'll see. You know what, Paul? I'm going to put you on the spot and ask you something. Our Steam game giveaway. Are we about to... It's been a couple of weeks. Do we have winners? Are we going to announce some winners?
Actually, no, I did pick someone out and I PM'd them, but I actually forgot who it is. I know, headed hands.
You know who you are.
I know. I wrote it down in Notepad and I accidentally closed it before we started doing this. But yeah. We do, yeah.
Someone
Check your PMs.
Check your PMs in the forums, yeah.
Do you remember what game they were given?
No, I just asked them what they wanted.
Oh, okay, right.
So they can pick what they want.
Cool.
Probably, hopefully not Aliens, Colonial Marines.
Yeah, speaking of, we're still waiting on code for that. So Sega, if you're watching or listening, what's up with that? Sega, where's our code for Aliens, Colonial Marines? Never mind. So yes, moving on to this week's events in the video gaming. I think let's start with a kind of a tale of two Kickstarters this week. One which looks like it's going to be very successful in the form of Dreamfall Chapters, and the other of which, Wildman, unfortunately had the pull plugged on it. No, the plug pulled on it. In fact. On Monday by Gas Powered Games. They don't reckon they're going to raise the additional, I think it was something like $600,000 that they needed in about 4 days. So that was probably unlikely to happen. Paul, you yesterday were sad to see Wildman getting kind of temporarily at least canned.
Yeah, I'm actually quite gutted about it. Mainly because I want to see Gas Power Games succeed, because I do like Chris Taylor, but also actually because the game looked half decent and it was a nice idea behind it. But I just think one of the problems they've had is they haven't been able to convey their idea or vision for the game particularly well. We've seen it being labelled as a MOBA title, a strategy title. Is it an ARPG? It's not a MOBA title. It was being sold as an ARPG, and yeah, I'm quite disappointed actually that isn't going to be made under a Kickstarter where the transparency, because I mean it'd be entertaining if anything else to see it being developed, because Chris Taylor's always rather entertaining to watch. So yeah, I'm a bit gutted about that actually, to be honest, and I hope it does see the light of day. I hope somebody picks it up because it is quite a nice idea for a game.
Yeah, Chris Taylor's always amazing to watch. Yeah, you kind of touched on it there, but I'm hopeful. I don't know whether they've actually said that they're kind of pursuing other avenues to make it, but I am hopeful that they've arranged something else and that the game is still in production. It just won't be through Kickstarter, because it is a game that I would like to see made, regardless of whether it's through the open curtains of Kickstarter or whether it's behind closed doors through a publishing deal. It's something that I want to see. It looks interesting. Although clearly don't actually understand what it is because they didn't do a very good job of conveying it. Yeah, sorry, carry on.
No, I think there were two issues. One, yes, there was a bit of confusion, a bit of lack of clarity over what the game actually was and how it would play, and also I think a few days in, of course, he did the video where he announced that a lot of the company were being laid off, essentially, which on the one hand provided a bit of a boost to the narrative as kind of turning it into a save gas powered games, but also brought in a lot of uncertainty, really, because I mean you think, okay, is 1.1 million at this point going to be enough to kind of save the company and make this game and keep the finances ongoing? So I don't know if that also perhaps put a bit of a spanner in the works, as it were.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's kind of a bit of a double-edged sword, that thing, save the company. I think a lot of people will have looked at it and maybe have thought, well, is this a Kickstarter to save the company, or is this a Kickstarter to make the game? And I think it may have prevented some people from maybe parting with the cash, like you say, with some relative amount of uncertainty whether Gas Powered Games could get through it or not. I think, like you say, it probably did give a small cash boost for a couple of days or so while the publicity ran on that, but ultimately it's not going to be done. So yeah, I'm still very disappointed, actually, and I hope they do get through it. I really do.
I think you touched on something quite true there, in that you said a lot of people wondered whether the game would even get made, even if it did get funded, because I've been trawling through internet comments recently because I've apparently got no desire to hold on to my sanity. And yeah, a few of them have basically been along the same lines. They basically said, that if the company's this close to folding, then, is the company actually going to be able to finish the game? Is this going to be enough money to do it? How certain are they of this? Customer uncertainty. A few people going so far as to call the Kickstarter pathetic, which I thought was a bit harsh. But
yeah, that is harsh, actually, considering some of the shit that I've seen on Kickstarter.
Yeah, I mean, it's perhaps worth remembering that when Double Fine did their obviously extremely successful Kickstarter, there was a bit of a backdrop of layoffs to that. I think when that was announced, Tim Schafer kind of mentioned that there may have possibly been some layoffs in the offing without the success of that Kickstarter, but it didn't have quite the same sort of sudden out of the blue feel to it. Like it wasn't as if, oh, Double Fine is in big trouble. It was more like, well, we might have to let a couple of people go, kind of thing. So it didn't drag it down as quite so much.
Double Fine did have they were in the middle of a situation which was kind of similar, not nearly so dire. From what I know, feel free to correct me if you know more. In the Gas Powered Games had a number of projects that they'd been working on that publishers had basically canned at the last minute, or so I heard. And from what I know, Double Fine was kind of in the same state, in that a couple of projects they'd been working on were essentially unceremoniously canned by the publishers. Brutal Legend 2 was one of the more famous. They said I think Tim Schafer came out and said he thought that was a done deal, and they'd started work on it already when EA or whoever it was got in touch with them and said, "No, we're not doing it."
But you make a good point there, Tim, and the fact that maybe this is one of the reasons why people are going for Kickstarter, because then you can you're in more control of your own destiny. If publishers are going to keep pulling the plug on titles at the last minute or whatever, how the hell are you supposed to plan? You've got to do your cash flow, your projections, all that kind of crap, and someone pulls the plug, you're kind of left high and dry. And I think I can understand why, if you look at some of the more successful ones with 22 cans, obviously with Goddess and obviously Brab and the Robert Space Industry stuff, you can understand why they're doing it, because everything is so uncertain right now. If it's not bloody Call of freaking Duty, then we just don't know whether a game is going to make it or not. Unfortunately, things are a little bit predictable these days.
I mean, going back to Double Fine again for a second, that did happen with them beforehand anyway. That was exactly what happened with Brutal Legend. So that was in production with Activision to publish for a while, and then Activision cancelled it and EA picked it up, and there were all the subsequent lawsuits. So they've kind of suffered from this repeatedly, which makes me wonder if that's kind of why they've started to go in for a lot of smaller games more than anything. Since then, their output in terms of things, Costume Quest, Stacking, Iron Brigade, The Cave, it's all been fairly smaller downloadable titles that are kind of one-shots with publishers. Yeah, I kind of wonder if these experiences with the big publishers have kind of shaped the way that they've done things, and if this is driving more developers towards Kickstarter just so that they've got more control over their projects.
Well, all that's going to happen is the big publishers are going to have less interesting titles and more predictable titles. Another Assassin's Creed, another Call of Duty, 10, whatever it is. All the good stuff is going to come through the Kickstarter and the indie developers and so on as digital download. That in itself is quite exciting.
Tim's working out whether we're already at Call of Duty 10.
So,
Yes.
no, I think you're right. Actually, I think Call of Duty 10 is the next one.
Hey.
I was just pulling. I just pulled that out of my ass. I really just pulled that out of my ass. But never mind. You know.
Yeah, well, actually, we'll come on to publishers milking their series in shortly. But let's mention a Kickstarter that is doing extremely well, possibly unsurprisingly, which is the Dreamfall Chapters, which has been kind of trailed to some degree. I mean, we heard about it. I think last year, even the guy was going to set up his own company and do another Dreamfall game. I actually just looked it up now. It's at $687,000 out of $850,000,
Wow.
and that's after about 5 days. So I think that's pretty comfortably going to make its amount and some. Tim, you're gazing wistfully. Listeners can't see this, but you're gazing wistfully off into the middle distance, thinking about Dreamfall. Have you pledged some money to this, Tim, or are you just reap the benefits of it being made later?
I haven't pledged money yet. I will as soon as I can work out which bank I need to rob in order to pledge $10,000 towards it, or whatever the maximum pledge is.
Oh, is that the one where you get to have lunch with them and then also create an NPC backstory and everything else?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I haven't even looked. I just want to give them as much money as possible.
I'm on the page. You receive a super special thank you in the opening credits and a personal thank you call from the dev team.
Oh yay!
And a special gift bag, personalized audio call outs. You go to the launch party in Oslo. The writer will serenade you or your companion with his guitar.
Jesus.
And more. There you go. That's what you get for your 10 grand. It's not too bad.
I've been waiting for another longest journey game since 2006. Nearly 8 years at this point. Yeah, I want it.
All right,
I've
so
been waiting for it for that long. The last game ended on a horrific cliffhanger, and Ragnar Tornquist, and I imagine I've pronounced that wrong. He basically said that he had the story all worked out, and if they couldn't make another game of it, they were going to try various avenues to get a game made. If couldn't make a game out of it, he'd try doing something else, so that people would know how the story finished, whether it was in terms of doing a comic or simply just releasing his notes online. And yeah, now finally we're getting the next part, and I can't wait. I've been waiting so long already. It's finally being made. It's just rejuvenated all of that hope. I can't be bitter about this.
well, hang on a minute. We're supposed to be three bitter British men, and you're just letting the side down really
I'm
badly.
sorry, internet review person. I can't be bitter about Dreamfall.
We're optimistic about some games, occasionally.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Dreamfall was a big game. It resonated with me really well with the state that my life was in at that point. The actual story, not the plot, obviously, because I don't travel between worlds and I don't live in the future. But the basic story of it kind of worked really well for me, with kind of the directionless protagonist, because I was in very much the same state at the time. And much as you can argue, and probably should argue, that the gameplay is pretty dreadful, the actual story, the characters, the dialogue, the world building, everything else just worked so well it didn't really matter. It's a story that I couldn't really imagine being told in any way other than through a game. It just does it so well through that medium.
So, were you telling us, Tim, that you were in a darker place then than you are now? Jesus Christ, that must have been really dark.
No, I had hope back then. Now I've just given into despair. It's fine. No, I mean that came out when I would have been probably around about 19 or 20. I think I don't know. I don't think I really want to go into the details of that.
No, please don't.
It would be quite
therapy.
It would be quite depressing and uninteresting. But no, I mean there was just a lot of stuff with the game that kind of I could relate to in my life, which possibly sounds a little bit weird, but just with the characters in particular, it just worked really well for me, particularly because it turned out to be so well written, so interesting. And And yeah, I've been waiting for the continuation ever since, and I'm thoroughly looking forward to it, because it ends on a hell of a cliffhanger.
Okay, someone shut Tim up now. He's ecstatic. Shut up, Tim.
It reminds me of the time Grim Fandango resonated with me because I was a undead travel agent in Mexico at the time.
You know, I had that exact experience as well.
Haven't we all? That's why it was such a blockbuster hit and so many people bought Grim Fandango. Does this, one more question on the Kickstarters, I think, before we leave this subject. Does this kind of, the contrast between these two, does it show again that if you have a very kind of clear, straightforward pitch, you're always going to be better off? I'm thinking like this one, it's it's the original Dreamfall guy saying, I'm going to finish off Dreamfall. That's really straightforward to get across. Everyone who played the previous games knows instantly what that's about.
Yeah, I'll just
contrasting with Wildman, which is a new IP. It's a bit strange.
I think if Chris Taylor had come out and said, "Okay, I'm making Total Annihilation 2 or something," I think he would have done it. It would have been because this is a new idea. It was a little bit maybe off the wall with regards to what the game was about. It was a little bit confusing, obviously, to start with. But if he'd come out and said, "Okay, I'm going to make TA2," Total Annihilation was excellent, by the way. I think everyone would have just pitched in and done it, and he would have reached the goal. I don't know if you agree with that, Tim.
I think you're right. I think that a large part of why Dreamfall Chapters has been doing so well is that Dreamfall is such a cult hit. There are a huge number of people. I know damn well I'm not the only one that the game resonated so well with. I'm not the only one. I'm not going to talk about it again. It's fine.
I think. Okay. I think. Hang on, just a quick point. I think I've read a comment this week from I think it's some dev. I can't remember who it was basically saying, "Oh, we're making Kickstarter, and it's not going to be a remake of some 80s or 90s game." Now that is proving to be very popular, and that's why Kickstarter works, because people are looking for things that aren't going to get made by big publishers. They're looking for that nostalgia element, and this goes back to my point. If Chris Taylor had put out TA2 or something like that, which I don't even think he owns the rights to anyway, but if he had, then I think it would have done it. New things generally are a bit harder to pitch on Kickstarter because you do have to convey that brand new idea with some text and some rough videos usually, and some dev blogs, and so it can get a little bit confusing. They try hard. I mean, the Wildman campaign did try very hard to convey things well and what they plan to develop, but it was just too different or too off the wall maybe for some people. Yeah,
I'm a little torn really, because on the one hand I think it's a shame that Kickstarter, that it is harder to pitch something like really unique. Apparently it seems really hard to do that through Kickstarter, but I mean, I guess on the other hand, a lot of these games, although they are tapping into some nostalgia, they're in a lot of cases games that we haven't seen for a while because the publishers aren't supporting this type of game. So they are new again in that sense, because I don't see that many people pitching in for for like Obsidian's RPG type of thing. I don't see that many going for another Dreamfall Chapters. Obviously they haven't, otherwise it probably would have been made by now. So yeah, it's nice that they're being made that way.
Dreamfall Chapters isn't the sort of thing that's going to be, sad to say, it's almost certainly not going to be a multi-million seller. It's not the sort of thing that a big publisher is going to look at and think, yes, we're going to throw you a huge development budget. And I would imagine that there are difficulties for publishers as well when it comes to publishing games. It's not just a case of throwing money at a project. So yeah, I don't know. I kind of suspect that it's also, much as it would probably get returns because it's a cult hit with a really, really strong and vocal fan base, they wouldn't necessarily be big enough to justify the trouble that they might have to go through to sort it all out. So something like Kickstarter kind of cuts that out entirely. It just gives the developer the money from the people who actually want the game, which is where it's useful. But like I say, I think that Dreamfall Chapters is kind of lucky because it's got that huge fan base. It's got a big groundswell.
Can we move on from Dreamfall Chapters now? Because Tim, I think, is in love with it, and I think we know that now, Tim.
Do you need me to become more bitter again?
Yeah, please.
I'll do that.
You sour-faced bastard. Come on, Tim.
Let's move on to, as mentioned, The larger publishers doing what larger publishers do. There's been a few conference call activities this week. We've had Ubisoft, whatever you want to pronounce that name as, confirming, perhaps unsurprisingly, that they're hard at work on another Assassin's Creed, which will be shock horror. That will be supposedly in a new time period, have a new hero, etc.
Yawn.
Also kind of revealed at the same time that they have multiple teams working on various Assassin's Creeds, and that's why they're pumping them out so damn fast. Warner Brothers as well today have pretty much said there's going to be another Batman Arkham X coming along probably this year, and I think somewhat tangentially, but also Blizzard did their call this week in which they said they're going to be aggressively sorry, so aggressive, my voice went strange, aggressively supporting Diablo 3, which obviously is one of their major franchises. What do you guys make of all this stuff? It's not terribly surprising news, I suppose, but kind of underlines what we were talking about before.
It's not surprising in the slightest. None of it really. Well, okay, the Batman Arkham game, I don't know if I was expecting that, if only because we haven't heard anything about it by now, and I kind of would have expected some information.
Actually, we've heard rumors that it would be
Silver Age.
Silver Age comics, which I would love. I mean, it would be completely out of character with the previous two games, but I think that would be amazing if they went back to that kind of weird, campy, bizarre villains type era.
I did actually hear a rumour today, and I might try and find this in a moment, that it wouldn't be Rocksteady working on this game, that it was another team doing the latest Batman Arkham thing. I don't know if that's true or not. I'm going to try and find that in a moment.
I'm not sure I'd like that.
Yeah, that's a bit worrying. What else was there? The Assassin's Creed thing, that's not a surprise, and frankly good. Connor's a dick. Is that bitter enough for you?
Yeah, I like it, Tim. I like it.
I don't like Connor. Didn't like Assassin's Creed 3 much either, to be honest. And the Blizzard call, yeah, World of Warcraft subscriber numbers down, but not in any way that's at all significant, really. They're still higher than they were towards the end of Cataclysm before Mists of Pandaria came out. So that's really a big surprise. That's vague variation, really.
Well, the Blizzard thing interested me because they kind of said, I think it's done 2 million since, another further 2 million sales since last August. So people are still buying it despite all the negative sort of discussion around the game.
This is Diablo 3, right?
Yeah, Diablo 3, and also how they're supposedly aggressively supporting the game. Well, that's bollocks. Just last night we had the first Q&A dev questions come back in, which were submitted by the community, and they went down like a lead balloon. And yeah, I don't know. I just don't get it. We've got a developer here sitting on one of the biggest video game franchises of all time, not listening to what people actually want. It's just complete head in the sand. I know they haven't got a game director for the game just now, and it is a pretty much directionless ship, and it is actually showing in the responses that they got back. But what really pissed me off more than anything else about it was the tone in which the developers came back with the answers to questions which really didn't answer anything that anybody really wanted to know anyway, because they were all hand-picked. But honestly, they were treating you like a 12-year-old.
Would it have fit if they'd kind of added a smiley face and a lol at the end of each line?
It just, you know, if you think about it, most people there was actually a thread on the Blizzard boards this week saying, why did you buy Diablo 3? Everyone's put Diablo 2, Diablo 2, Diablo 1, Diablo 2, Diablo 1, and so on. So work it out. That game was released, how many years ago? 15 years ago. So the average age of anyone who's really going to be into this franchise is going to be more than at least 12. So don't write your discussion, your Q&A devs aimed at 12-year-olds. I know the Blizzard boards can be full of people that act like 12-year-olds, but ultimately people actually want some serious answers, and they actually want the game to be good, and I want the game to be good. But it is right now, even with Jay Wilson going, there just seems to be some no direction with it at all, and still not listening. And they really need to start listening. And actually, getting the content updates out quickly and quicker than they have been doing. The fact that they've renamed PvP to Brawling, I mean, gee, yeah, a name change, that makes it all so much different. It's exactly the same, you just change the name of it. It doesn't matter how you dress it up or how you know, whatever you call it, it's still the same, and it's still not what everyone was wanting in the first place. So I really do hope that they get their act together, because it could be an absolutely fantastic game, but they need to sort out the itemization issues, which still haven't been fixed. But here you go, it's 1.7 is out today, out actually probably as this podcast goes out, but with nothing fantastically brilliant in it apart from Brawling, which is just 1v1 non-balanced PvP with no leaderboard scores. It's all very pointless, really. But yeah, go and read you can read the full Q&A development blog on Diablo IncGamers, and there's some quite scathing comments from the community and it's just not happy about it at all. But I really do hope they sort it out, they get a game director in and just make this franchise everything that it should be.
That was staggeringly better. Well done. I want to interject quickly and point out that I quite like Diablo 3, but then I'm not one of the old franchise fans more than anything. I played the games and then I stopped playing the games. But I haven't been playing Diablo 2 for 15 years, and I'm not the sort of person who posts on Blizzard boards.
But so that's my point, Tim. The thing is, like, everyone, there's going to be a high portion of people that will pick the game up, put it down, never play it again. But there are people that played Diablo 1 and 2 all the time.
And at this point, a year after release, those are the people that the developers kind of need to be aiming at.
Absolutely, because they're going to put an expansion out, but there's going to be a high percentage of people that won't touch it with a barge pole unless they actually sort out some of the fundamental problems of the original game. You can't.
I don't know if I believe that, if only because of the sheer number of WoW players who complain constantly about WoW and then keep playing it and keep paying for expansions.
But this is one of the problems. There's obviously WoW influence in Diablo 3, and it doesn't necessarily fit with the original game mechanics from Diablo 1 and 2. Everyone wanted Diablo 1 and 2 to be the core for Diablo 3. That didn't happen. I think right now they really have to get their updates out fast, quicker than they certainly have been doing. Actually start listening to the community, because there's people who really want to like this game, they really want to play it, they're sticking with it. So start listening to them and get the updates done, because it is, you're right, Tim, it is a good game. It just needs work. It still needs work.
It's I can totally understand the people who say that they can't play it for 200 hours. And you know, if you really want to play a game for 200 hours, then more power to you. On the other hand, I don't think it's a bad game in any way, shape or form, and frankly, in terms of value for money, I think I played it for probably about 30 or 40 hours, and that's way more than I'd get out of most games for a similar price. I think it's a good game, but yeah, I can totally understand that the people who played Diablo 2 and have been playing it for the past however many years, they are inevitably going to be disappointed with it because they can't do the same thing with this.
Going back to your other points on Assassin's Creed, the next Assassin's Creed, I don't care. I really don't care. Right. It's not designed for the PC. None of them ever have been, so I don't care. So who cares? Move on. Batman, interesting. Don't know who's making it, but it will be interesting to see how that pans out. Assassin's Creed, don't care. Blizzard, get your act together, get that game sorted. Moving on.
We know that you're a screaming Blizzard fanboy based solely on the background to your webcam.
Yeah.
You are basically one of the people who acts like a 12-year-old on the Blizzard forums, aren't you?
That's ironic.
You say that now, having just had a big rant about how Blizzard needs to get their act together.
Oh, they just need a game director. They need someone to come in and see the game through its proper vision. That's all they need. There you go. I
would like to start seeing ironic advertising backdrops on some of like the IGN and game trailers in the news. Yeah, this is a game that I think is shit, but it's here anyway. Yeah. We've talked quite a long time about that stuff, so I'm going to just quickly mention that Wasteland 2 released quite a lot of footage from its also quite popular Kickstarter. It's kind of a first look at how the gameplay is panning out. It's about 15 minutes long, and it's quite good. If you had any interest in Wasteland 2, I'd recommend having a look at that. And also, if you were waiting on Warframe keys, we got a bunch more in. I think we still have some left.
Yeah, we're good for Warframe keys. We're about 35,000 plus in now. and they're still going like hotcakes. People seem to be enjoying it. So yeah, you can still pick them up on the site. You can just do a search for Warframe and you'll get the result back on how to get them.
There was a terrible moment when the developers were pointing to our site in their update email, and we'd actually already run out of keys, and we almost got lynched. But now it's all sorted. It's all fine. You can get keys again. So games. What have we been playing? Tim, what have you been? I know you've been playing a couple of things, but what would you like to tell us about?
I've been playing literally everything. There's a couple of things I want to touch on. The big one this week, I've been playing Dead Space 3 for probably about an hour and a half so far, so I can't really talk much about that. It's made me jump out of my skin once, which is a pretty good sign. Not quite convinced by the shifts towards more action-y stuff with kind of human enemies to fight as well as the necromorphs, but I will admit that it does add a little bit of variety in terms of with human enemies you're obviously aiming for the head, and with the necromorphs, as is standard in Dead Space, you're trying to dismember the limbs. So there's a bit of variety there, but right now, kind of after the first chapter, it definitely is going back into proper Dead Space territory with huge derelict spaceships and monsters jumping out of ventilation ducts. Quite enjoying it so far, I suppose, though I really haven't played nearly enough to make any real judgment, so I'll probably talk about that a bit more next week. The one thing I do want to talk about, though, in a bit more detail is the Showdown Effect. I don't know if that's ringing any bells for either of you two.
Yeah, I've sort of been reading a little bit about it this week, actually.
When you say it, it sounds a bit like the Showdown Effect, and then I think about System Shock. So, but it has nothing to do with System Shock.
Start gazing wistfully into the distance, as do we all. System Shock, you will live on forever in our hearts. No, the Showdown Effect is a weird one. I think it's PC only, though I might be wrong. I don't know whether it's kind of being aimed at consoles, because it would fit in fairly well on most. But it's sort of a multiplayer only brawler thing. The closest touchstone is something like Super Smash Brothers, in terms of you pick a character and you have a big expansive level, and you run around the level and try to kill the other players in a side-on perspective. And yeah, it's based around cheesy 80s action movies, to the extent that one of the two starter characters you have is basically an Arnie ripoff, who speaks with a slightly naff Austrian accent and constantly makes references to Arnie films.
Can we have an impression, Tim?
No.
Oh, come on.
No. Well, are we going to do a round of Arnie impressions?
Yes. I'm going to kick your ass. I'm going to kick your ass.
See you at the party, Richter.
Told you could eat my cookies.
Get to the chopper.
What's the one where he's trying desperately? The best film that he's in, not the best film, is when he's desperately trying to get a toy at Christmas, but Jingle All the Way, yeah.
That's no. Surely it's got to be Kindergarten Cop, or possibly Commando if you're.
Oh well, this is going way off track. Jesus.
Total Recall, I think. But okay.
Very good. What the hell was I talking about?
Showdown Effect, Arnie.
Bad Arnie ripoff.
You can.
And you must.
It's there's other characters as well. There's kind of the sort of kung fu master, there's the cop whose partner was killed on his last day before retiring. It's basically all this huge mishmash of 80s action movie cliches thrown together. It's got a really interesting system in terms of the way the combat works, because it's got split melee and ranged. Melee, you can kind of pick up any object in the environment, from kitchen knives to halberds, fire extinguishers, whatever. You can throw them or slash with them, and block bullets with them as well. On the other hand, you can use ranged weapons like pistols, machine guns, shotguns. The interesting thing about those is you actually have to have the crosshair on the other person to hit them. You can't just sort of fire in the general direction. If the bullets pass through the sprite, then it'll hit them. You have to have the crosshair on them, or they'll just whiz past them. which again does give a very action movie vibe in terms of someone charging forward and bullets just flying past them. It's very mobility focused, and fights kind of frequently devolve into two people fighting in melee, and then someone else will come in with a ranged weapon and try to shoot at them, and then one of them will leap away and switch to a ranged weapon. It's really interesting.
Question is, Tim, I've got a question for you. This is done by Paradox, isn't it?
Published by, yes.
Yeah.
It's developer is Arrowhead, I think, who made Magicka.
Is there any global world maps involved?
No.
No, okay. Just checking because it was Paradox.
It's not a Paradox grand strategy game, no. It's a very, very fast-paced, multiplayer-only brawler action game thing.
Cool.
The one worry I have, the actual systems work really, really well at the moment. It's quite reminiscent of Chivalry, which we played a while back, in terms of the fact that it's very easy to pick up how it works, but actually playing it well is really hard. In terms of knowing when to block, when to roll, when to use ranged weapons, and so on and so forth. And yeah, you get points as you play matches to unlock new weapons and so on. You can unlock them in whatever order you choose, and new characters as well. There's only 2 maps in the beta at the moment, and I think 5 characters and 2 game modes, so it's a little bit sparse at the moment. And that's kind of the one big worry I have about it, is that it won't be varied enough on launch. As the characters are all fundamentally identical except for one special ability each. The weapons, the ranged weapons, there are like 5 types. And while there are lots of different skins for them, they have absolutely no bearing. One shotgun is exactly the same as another shotgun. I'm kind of worried that it's not going to be varied enough, that it's going to be a little bit samey because most of the characters and weapons are fairly similar. As opposed to something like Super Smash Bros., where you've got 40 characters who are all wildly different. But for the time being, it's certainly entertaining. I think it's just been updated today, or yesterday by the time you watch this, with a new game mode. Yeah, I'm kind of looking forward to putting a bit more time into it and seeing how it evolves as the beta goes on.
Alright, well, that sounds like one to keep an eye on, definitely. But I mean, the Magicka of course was exceptional in multiplayer, so that's quite something to live up to. But
Magicka is one of the most ironic games I've ever played, simply insofar as it's one of the best multiplayer games I've ever played, and it's simultaneously got one of the worst multiplayer implementations I've ever seen, particularly on launch. To close off the Showdown Effect, I would say I wouldn't necessarily say you should opt in and buy it now or anything like that. I've kind of got reasonably high hopes, but they are just hopes at this point, and still a few flaws that need to be addressed.
Alright, I have been playing Special Forces Team X, which had either of you guys really heard of that game before it was launched last week?
Yeah, I played it a bit actually last week when the codes came through, and it was kind of came out of the blue as a Microprose title.
Yeah.
Aren't they dead?
Yeah, and it wasn't a flight sim. It wasn't a racing game. Odd.
Yeah. So there's 2 things going on here. One, I wanted to highlight the fact that this is a multiplayer-only game that has received pretty much no advertising or hype whatsoever, which is not great for building a player base exactly. And yeah, the other angle on this was the kind of interesting, the Microprose angle. It's developed by Zombie, who did Blacklight Retribution and also Blacklight Tango Down. It's published by Atari and Microprose. Now, obviously, Atari are filing for bankruptcy, both the French and US branches, which may explain the lack of advertising and hype surrounding this game. And Microprose, I think Microprose the name was owned by Atari at some point, and it's now been sold to some other company. If you go to the current Microprose site, you'll find that they mostly publish borderline shovelware fitness games, Jillian Michaels Pilates Fitness, stuff like that, and Special Forces Team X.
What a great fit.
Yeah, I don't know. I kind of don't know how they've ended up in this situation, and it's kind of interesting that I noticed some of the players were asking on the Zombie Studios forums, hey, where's the forum for Special Forces? And all those threads get locked, and the community manager says, well, we don't own this IP, please direct all comments to Microprose. So I wouldn't say... Yeah.
That sounds a little bit like a strained relationship there.
Yeah. I don't know how much Zombie are thrilled that they had to kind of complete this game and get it out the door. That's speculation, but the working relationship does not seem particularly great. And it's kind of a shame because I mean the game is fairly solid. It's pretty by the numbers as a third-person multiplayer cover shooter with teams. There's no plot whatsoever. You're just some military people shooting at some other military people. But it has a few good ideas. It's got a pretty decent sort of map generation aspect where before each game, the map is divided into 3 distinct portions, and you kind of vote on which portion you want to go where. So on the left, you might have like an admin building or a construction yard. In the middle, you might have like a refinery or a factory or something. It's all very sort of urban building based, but it gives you some. It sort of solves the map variety problem that these games tend to have, because it kind of shakes it up a little bit. Although you recognise individual portions when they're put in different orders, you know it can influence the different game modes to a degree. So that's quite nice. It has an ability where you launch a dog at someone, which is quite nice to see in the game.
Yeah.
Do you actually have a cannon that fires a dog?
Sadly, no.
Do you remember when we were playing whatever that tower defense game was on Xbox?
Yeah.
And I had a serious love for the towers that shot bees, and I proclaimed that we need more guns in games that just fire animals at people. That's what I want. I want a game where I have a gun that shoots dogs. I don't mean a gun that you use to shoot at dogs. I mean a gun that actually launches dogs. Oh,
yeah, it's not quite there yet, unfortunately, but it is quite strange in that you do kind of, because obviously you're not carrying a couple of dogs around with you under your arms at all times, so it is kind of curious where you should be, because otherwise where are they coming from? They do just kind of mysteriously spawn from, I don't know, a pocket or something. Maybe they're inflatable, I don't know. The problem with those is that they're a little bit bugged at the moment, and sometimes they just stand there looking a bit confused.
They're wondering where they came from.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, they're disorientated. Poor things. Yeah. So yeah, it's got 5 different game modes. It's got team deathmatch. Yeah. It's got capture point, where it's there's like 3 different points on the map. If you hold the points, you get your points total ticks up. We all know how that one works. Hot zone, which is kind of similar to that, except it's 1 capture point that just kind of moves around the place. Capture the flag, which is capture the flag, and another one which is slightly more inventive called high value target, where when the high value target is on your team, you need to protect him. You'll get more points for kills. When he's on the opposition team, you need to kill him off as quickly as possible because they're getting more points for kills, etc., etc. Tim, you had a query.
Yeah, I didn't have a query. I just wanted to mention something. I'm sorry, I'm backtracking a bit here, but I didn't talk about Showdown Effect's game mode. Sorry to interject something. It has Team Deathmatch, which is whatever, but it has Showdown mode, which is the basic deathmatch, and it's one of my favourite things in that is that when the timer ticks down to 0, it goes into Showdown mode, where it turns off respawning, and basically the player base is just whittles down until it's 2 people battling it out. It can be annoying if they're trying to run away and bandage. The best thing about this is that when the timer hits 0, the stage goes batshit. One of the levels at the moment is set in Tokyo, and at this point all the electricity goes off and all the lights go off, and Godzilla appears in the background and starts smashing the shit out of buildings. It's just a really lovely touch. Unfortunately, there are no guns that fire dogs, so it's still 1 step behind Special X Team Forces.
No, it doesn't have a gun. I told you it doesn't have a gun that fires dogs.
Okay, it's got inflatable dogs though.
I'm going to pretend that it does.
Yeah, well, I kind of wish that Special X Team Forces Special X had a game mode as interesting as that sounds, but unfortunately it doesn't really. And the other problem is related to the fact that it had no advertising, is that the player base isn't that massive, so you can easily get team deathmatch games, you can easily get capture point games. I got quite a few capture the flag games. The other two, not so much. They're kind of harder to get hold of games in. And it has this sort of standard leveling mechanics as well. As you kill things and win games and stuff, you unlock new guns, shotguns and sniper rifles and all that business, and different types of grenade, perks, things like that. But
you touched on, sorry, you touched on in the review itself and kind of just then as well. You mentioned that the player base isn't huge at the moment. I've got to say, I hate reviewing games, multiplayer only games, where that's the case. If only because, do you recommend something to people even knowing that in a few weeks' time there might be only 6 people playing it? It's one of those really weird little things about writing reviews. Should that impact the score? It probably should, if you're taking the score as a recommendation of whether to actually get the game or not. It's just a weird one, that.
Yeah, in my case, I would say it did impact the score to a degree. I mean, it's not a game that I loved by any means. It's pretty solid. It's pretty dependable. It's pretty much unambitious, I would say. Aside from the map generation thing, which is quite nice, it doesn't do anything particularly surprising or spectacular. It does what it sets out to do. Okay, the team. Most of the modes ensure that you have to remain mobile, hopping between cover, but still working to a degree fairly well as a team. You in fact even get extra experience points for sticking near your teammates, so it encourages you to do that. It's a third-person cover shooter with a few bugs at the moment and quite a small player base. If you interested in that, you should get on now, because I'm not sure how long it will survive for, and given the publisher's situation, it's probably not going to have masses of support, post-release support. I wouldn't have thought. Prove me wrong.
Shame.
Yeah. Tim, I keep hearing myself back in your mic at the moment. I don't know.
Sorry, I'll go back to muting it. Off topic though, have you been watching Boardwalk Empire lately?
Oh God!
Wait, that was last week.
That was last week, Tim. We're on movies this week.
No. Paul, I know when you played Special Forces X Team, Special Forces X Forces, you especially liked the slightly camp voice.
Oh, I loved the camp voice. Yeah, I really did.
Character.
Yeah, reloading. Yeah, but the reason it was really stood out for me, because I was trying to talk to you at the same time on Skype here, so I had all the game audio down apart from the voice, so it just sounded absolutely ridiculous.
So this is a game in which you play as Graham Norton firing dogs at people
Yeah,
from
brilliant.
behind.
If that's not a recommendation, I don't know what is.
That
buy that.
That makes it sound a lot more exciting than it really is, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
Well, actually, when you and I, Paul, were trying it together, it did highlight a problem that it had, which was, at the time, I could only see US servers and you can only see EU ones, so it was very, impossible, in fact, for us to play on the same server. They have actually fixed that. I can now see EU ones.
Right.
Although there is a kind of a bug going around where if you level up on a foreign non-local server, it sometimes resets your level back to 1, so that's good. And also the server browser is a bit weird, actually. All the ping ratings all say this has really good ping, even if it's like an Australian server, which I kind of have my doubts about. I think that's just a lie. I don't think that's working very well. So Paul, aside from I'm not going to labour this joke anymore, Special Forces game, have you been playing anything else this week?
I've been playing the same two things I was playing last week, which is Path of Exile and obviously the game that cannot be discussed.
Dirty Bomb.
Yeah, the one that
Dirty Protest, as Tim keeps calling
the one that can't be discussed. I won't discuss that But yeah, just playing more Path of Exile actually, and actually getting more into it and enjoying it.
So wait, you're still playing Dirty Bomb then? Well, that speaks fairly highly of it, doesn't it? If you're still playing that this week, so I think we can take that as a recommendation.
No, Tim, no, doesn't work like that because it's called alpha test.
Damn.
So yeah, no, it doesn't quite work like that. But it's been an interesting week on that front. But
what is your favourite thing about Path of Exile at the moment? What's standing out for you that's keeping you coming back?
I'm getting more involved in actually the itemization, which is something that I'm generally not that fussed about. I don't give a crap. Usually it's like, ooh, drop an item, pick it up. I'm actually paying more attention to it. I'm actually quite enjoying that aspect of it. Not trying to rush through it, just trying out all the different skill stuff, you know, because it's sort of the skills are built on gems, which you stock into your weapons. So I'm enjoying that too. You know, put something in, you go, ooh, what's that? You know, so as I progress further on, I'll get more things that I'll be able to do. So yeah, I'm just quite enjoying it actually, and I like the fact that there's no gold in it. I like the fact that all the currency is actually items that are picked up in the game. So it's like a bartering system with other people to get stuff you want. I like the fact that there's no gold. It's just quite clever. I do like it. Yeah.
It's a neat touch.
It is. All right then. What's coming up on IncGamers? Actually, maybe we shouldn't discuss what's coming up on IncGamers this week. We're not totally sure yet, are we?
No, we're winging it this week. It's a bit of a wing it and see what happens week.
Because obviously Tim's reviewing Dead Space 3, but we got that code very, very late. We haven't got any Aliens Colonial Marines code, so we're not...
We got the Dead Space code late because EA doesn't know how its own digital distribution service works.
That was quite amusing.
Sorry, we don't have any Origin codes. We'll send you a boxed copy. What's that in the boxed copy? Oh, it's an Origin code.
I know, facepalm. Look, lovely, nice. What a waste of a courier strip that was. But we'll sort that.
3 days.
Yeah, we'll sort that out. We'll sort that out. But
yeah, I will probably try and get a Dead Space 3 review for later this week. It's supposed to be quite a long game, so that might be Friday. Although I make no guarantees of that. We will see how it goes. I could probably try and write something about Showdown Effect at some point if you want a proper review. I don't know.
We do have an interview supposedly coming back at some point for Age of Wonders 3, is it?
Oh yes, Age of Wonders 3.
I like those games.
And also, actually, we're interviewing one of the top Torchlight 2 mod makers too. So that's got to come back. David's looking after those. So we'll see how we go.
I was really bad at Age of Wonders 2.
Oh, I can't remember it at all.
I can. I remember that it took me about a fucking week to get off the first 2 maps. It was just so hard, or I was just so inept at it. Probably the latter, based on what everyone else has said.
I'd say, judging on your past performance, Tim, that would be the correct answer to that.
Oh.
Harsh but fair.
Sick burns.
You were in a bad place back then, Tim. As you've already pointed out earlier, you were in a bad place.
In a worse place now. I might reinstall Age of Wonders 2 and give it another go, and I'll report next how badly I do.
The hardship might push you over the edge.
You're supposed to be waiting for to do Star Drive or something. Is that right, Peter? You're waiting for code to come back from that?
Yes, I am waiting for code. That's twice now they've offered us preview code of Star Drive, and I said yes. Can I have preview code of Star Drive? And they haven't sent me anything. So I don't know. Maybe they don't want me to preview Star Drive.
It does make you wonder, really, doesn't it?
Is this our email addresses messing up again or something?
I don't think so.
No. This is just somebody not checking their inbox, more than likely.
Yeah.
Sega.
We'll whistle.
Do you want me to phone up Sega and be sarcastic at them?
No, Tim, because then...
Do you think, if Crisis 3 comes out next week, do you think we'll manage to get EA to send us
does it? Is it next week? That's a point. Oh, well, thanks for pointing that out.
That actually is, because it's Crisis, that's actually PC focused, so they might be a bit more forthcoming with PC code. Or they might listen to this podcast and fuck those guys.
There's just been so much promo for Crisis that I just kind of...
Turned into massive static man. Stop it.
You just anyone listening on headphones, just like toss them across the room. Just.
Yeah, we should wait a second for them to get their headphones back. They've probably got them back by now.
I might edit it. We'll see.
Might help.
Go on. Yeah. Well, Paul's just not going to speak now. I'm going to wrap up.
No, I'm going to speak. I'm not going to let you wrap up. I'm going to do what I usually do and interrupt you.
Yay.
Yeah, no. What I was going to say was that Crisis 3. There's been so much promo for it. I've kind of forgotten that when it's coming out. It just seems to be constantly a video trailer for this, that, and the next thing. So I've just totally forgotten. But yeah, okay. I'll hop on that.
I don't think my computer will run that. So Peter, you're probably going to get to review that. Which is probably good because I don't actually care about it one way or the other, which is slightly strange.
I don't know if I do. I'll find out when I play it. Yeah. So, God, Tim, I'm hearing myself again.
Jesus, Tim.
There we go.
Yeah.
There we go. It's all good. So yes, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter. Tim's flipping me the bird while I'm trying to cultivate social media, which I've heard is the thing that you should do in these Twitter-centric times. Yeah, do those things. And keep listening to us, and also leave us a review on iTunes if you are feeling that way inclined. And we'll be back next week with more podcastery. Until then, goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.